Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. Care homes face staff shortages this winter, with vaccines set to become law for care workers in November. The government expects 40,000 people to give up their job instead of taking the jab. The energy regulator says the price cap will rise if gas prices stay high. 15 million households could face a 30% increase on their energy bills. And the High Court finds Dubai's ruler authorized phone hacking against his ex-wife and her lawyer, with spyware that governments use to counter national security risks. The care home sector braces itself for staff shortages ahead of the government's mandatory vaccination policy. Rules coming into force on the 11th of November require all care home staff in England to be fully vaccinated. NTD's Envoy has this report.
Tens of thousands of unvaccinated care home workers are expected to leave their jobs or face the sack when government rules mandating the vaccine for them come into force. The chair of the National Care Association says vaccine mandates aren't the way forward.
This team of staff have worked tirelessly when they didn't have vaccinations, when we were struggling to get PPE, when we were struggling to have proper testing regimes in place. All of those things were in place and they did, they worked tirelessly, and we reward them by saying, well, if you're not vaccinated, we don't need you anymore.
The government estimates around 40,000 care home workers will choose not to take the vaccine. The vaccine mandate for care home staff in England comes into force on the 11th of November. Care home workers leaving their jobs may apply for other jobs in the NHS, but if the mandate is extended to other healthcare settings, they may again be faced with a sack.
What we're also seeing happening is people who are leaving the care sector are going into other parts of the health and care system where there isn't a mandatory vaccination requirement. And, whilst of course it's good news that they're staying within health and care, it's just moving the problem, moving the issue around, and I think creating unrealistic expectations. We know from government statistics that there are geographical differences across the country, so some parts of the country have very high levels of vaccination across care staff, as they do across the general population in those areas. Other places, often city centres, have much lower levels of vaccination take-up amongst the general population, and of course that's reflected in the workforce.
And bringing in mandates could have the opposite effect to the policymakers' intentions.
When compulsion becomes the thing, then people begin to doubt the narrative that's talking about it being safe. Why are we being mandated? And we've also heard people saying, if it's being mandated, what will they mandate us to do next?
While care home workers are required to get the vaccine, visitors, residents and emergency workers are among those exempt. Findings from a government consultation that's looking into extending the mandate to other frontline healthcare settings are expected to be published later this month. Jane Werrell, NTD News.
The energy regulator says if global gas prices remain high, the price cap will increase, with one research agency saying it will shoot up to £1,700. A report from the National Grid says UK consumers will likely be competing for gas with consumers from abroad. NTD's El Rhodes has the details.
A research agency warns volatile gas prices and the collapse of more suppliers could push energy bills much higher next year. Cornwall Insight predicts the energy price cap could rise from £1,300 this winter to £1,700 in summer. This is an increase of 30% on the already record price cap that started earlier this month. Energy regulator Ofgem told the BBC it's a worrying time for many people. And if global gas prices remain high, then when we update the price cap, unfortunately the level would increase. A National Grid report on Thursday says the UK can meet gas demand this winter, but it also says gas sellers will require a positive market price differential. That means British buyers will have to compete with foreign buyers for their gas. Consumers in the EU are facing a similar situation. Europe's gas infrastructure industry body says gas storage sites in the UK and EU are currently at 76% capacity, down from the seasonal average of 90%. Supply fears have been amplified by the fractured relationship between consumers in the UK and Europe and the energy supplier, Russia. On Wednesday, President Putin said Russia will export more gas, but EU leaders should consider a different approach.
We talked to the European Commission's previous lineup, and all its activity was aimed at phasing out of so-called long-term contracts. It was aimed at transition to spot gas trade. And as it turned out, it has become obvious today that this practice is a mistake.
On Wednesday, gas prices increased nearly 40% in 24 hours to a record high. Prices dropped back after Putin said Russia was increasing gas supplies to Europe. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
A Scottish court today handed British oil and gas company BP a win over Greenpeace. The environmental group tried to void the energy company's licence for a North Sea oil field. Greenpeace argued that regulators should consider emissions from the end use of the oil when issuing permits. The court ruled against this argument. It follows campaigns and a series of legal actions brought by climate activists targeting fossil fuel use, some of which were successful, such as cases against energy major Royal Dutch Shell and governments such as Germany. UK regulators approved the Volach field off the coast of Aberdeen in 2018, and it started producing in late 2020. Greenpeace said it would seek an appeal before the Supreme Court. After nearly 2 weeks of panic buying, fuel stock levels in British petrol stations are returning to normal. Average stock levels sank to a low of 15% on the 25th of September, the day after panic buying began. New figures show that levels have recovered to an average of 25% on Sunday. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy says there is significant regional variation. Their figures show how full petrol station storage tanks are. They range from just 16% on average in the southeast to 35% in Scotland. Tanks were typically around 33% full before the crisis began. The Department of Business added that petrol sales began to trend back to normal levels about 5 days after panic buying started. In other news, the custody battle between Dubai's ruler and his ex-wife takes a new turn. The High Court finds the ruler authorized the hacking of the phones of his ex-wife and her lawyers using spyware that's usually used by states to counter national security risks. NTD's Eddie Aiken has the story.
England's High Court finds Dubai's ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum ordered that the phones of his ex-wife Princess Haya bin Al Hussein and her lawyers be hacked. Cyber expert Bill Marchak from the University of Toronto's Internal Watchdog Citizens Lab was among the first to uncover the hacking. He says the sophisticated Pegasus software was used. Pegasus is developed by Israeli firm NSO for states to counter national security risks. Commenting on the ruling on Wednesday, Marchak called for closer regulation of the spyware industry.
Hopefully today's ruling will be an important step in establishing greater accountability for spyware companies and regulation of this very dangerous form of surveillance, where governments can essentially invisibly hack into people's phones and extract private information.
Marchak says data equivalent to 24 hours of voice recording or 500 photos were uploaded from Haya's phone. Haya's security team and lawyers, including Fiona Shackleton, a member of the House of Lords, were also hacked. When Marchak discovered the hacks in August 2020, he informed the lawyer's firm, Payne Hicks Beach.
We'll point out that the notification to Payne Hicks Beach was done at a time when members of the firm were under active surveillance.
The court was told at the same time NSO also realized Pegasus was being misused and informed its external advisor, lawyer Sherry Blair, the wife of former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Sherry Blair then alerted Shackleton. Haya's lawyers said that once the hacking was uncovered, NSO cancelled its contract with the United Arab Emirates. 72-year-old Mohammed and 47-year-old Haya have been involved in a custody battle. Haya, half-sister of Jordan's King Abdullah, fled to Britain with her 2 children in 2019, fearing for her safety. Mohammed rejected the court's findings, saying the rulings were unfair and based on an incomplete picture. He said in a statement that he has always denied the allegations made against him and will continue to do so. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And Prince Andrew will have a chance to review a 2009 settlement agreement that was previously secret. The deal might shield him from a civil lawsuit accusing him of sexually abusing a woman 2 decades ago when she was underage. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
Britain's Prince Andrew will have a chance to review a previously secret deal that could shield him from a sexual abuse claim. Virginia Giuffre has accused the Queen's second son of abusing her decades ago when she was underage. She claims she was trafficked for sex by the late financier Jeffrey Epstein, the Duke's former friend. The Prince has not been charged with crimes and has categorically denied Giuffre's claims against him. A US judge ordered on Wednesday that a 2009 settlement between Epstein and Giuffre be revealed to Prince Andrew's legal team. Andrew Brettler, a lawyer for the Prince, has previously said he thinks the agreement, quote, absolves our client from any and all liability. Giuffre's lawyers did not respond to a request for comment, but they had previously said the document is irrelevant to the case. Prince Andrew has been accused of abusing Virginia Giuffre in London, Manhattan, and on Epstein's private island in the US Virgin Islands. He has until the end of the month to formally respond to the allegations.
To lighter news, James Bond star Daniel Craig now has his own star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. He says his time on the Bond franchise was a most wonderful experience. Here's NTD's Joanne Robson with the story.
James Bond actor Daniel Craig tops off a week of triumphs with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on Wednesday. Craig says he's overwhelmed by the honour and that the Walk of Fame was one of the first places he visited in LA, inspiring his love of movies.
I thought I'd hear myself saying this, but you know, it's an absolute honour to be walked all over in Hollywood. So, and if happiness was measured by the company we keep, then me being on this pavement surrounded by all of these legends makes me a very, very, very happy man. So thank you very much.
The ceremony marks one of the last working days of Craig on the Bond franchise. His latest and last 007 film, No Time to Die, not only has rave reviews, but also receives the highest box office takings of any Bond film.
I've had an amazing time, and most wonderful experiences on this, and you know, it's time to move on. And with this movie, I feel like we've done what we needed to do, and it's time for someone else now. But this is just magic.
Craig's star is number 2,704 on the Walk of Fame on Hollywood Boulevard. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Andy Murray posted a plea online after his wedding ring got stolen. The tennis player says he's in the bad books at home. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more on this.
Andy Murray does not like to play tennis with his wedding ring on, so he ties it to the laces of his tennis shoes. This plan backfired when he aired the shoes outside a California hotel room overnight. The shoes were stolen, as was the attached ring. The Scot issued a video plea on Twitter and Instagram on Wednesday.
My physio said to me, "Where's your wedding ring?" And I was like, "Oh no." And I basically tie my wedding ring to my tennis shoes when I'm playing because I can't play with it on my hand. So yeah, my wedding ring's been stolen as well. So needless to say, I'm in the bad books at home.
Murray married Kim Sears in 2015. He is in California playing in the Indian Wells Masters tournament. The video went viral, and the tennis legend is hoping it will prompt recovery of the ring. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Still to come, Russian authorities say they are investigating allegations of abuse in the prison system. This comes after a prisoner rights group released videos showing what they say is overwhelming evidence of torture. That and more after the break. In Russia, a prisoners' rights group released videos which they say were evidence of alleged systematic torture in the country's prison system. Authorities have responded by firing prison officials and opening investigations. NTD's Joanne Robson tells us more. Please be warned, this story contains images you may find distressing.
Russian authorities said on Wednesday they had fired 5 senior prison officials in the Saratov region. This after a prisoner rights group began publishing what it said was evidence of orchestrated sadism at a prison in the region.
Currently, we have gathered overwhelming evidence that proves instances of torture in Russia have been set up literally by the intelligence services, that these instances of torture were systematic.
Osichkin says they had received a massive leak of documents, photos and videos. He says it proves that hundreds of prisoners in different parts of the country had been tortured and raped by other inmates, allegedly directed by prison officials.
I have no reason to be optimistic. Yesterday, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov started to voice thoughts that these videos are yet to be proven real, as they are scared themselves to admit the truth publicly, and the truth is awful.
Russian authorities said on Wednesday they had opened criminal inquiries into alleged sexual violence and abuse of authority.
For us, it was not news. The Committee Against Torture has been working in Russia for 20 years, and we received appeals about violence towards prisoners regularly from many Russian regions.
Russian prison conditions have already been in focus. This after jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny earlier this year complained of medical neglect at his prison and started a hunger strike. Russian law says inmates must not be treated in a way that is harsh or abases human dignity. If a prison official abuses his position, he can be jailed for up to a decade. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
And now to Germany, where a 100-year-old man is standing trial as an accessory to murder for serving as a Nazi SS guard at a concentration camp in World War II. He is charged with contributing to the deaths of several thousand people. NTD's Lorraine Ferrier has more on this.
A former SS guard went on trial in Germany on Thursday, charged with helping to send more than 3,000 people to their deaths in World War II. Prosecutors say Joseph S., who is now 100 years old, stood guard in the watchtower at Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin between 1942 and 1945. A French joint plaintiff whose father was killed in Sachsenhausen fought back tears at the beginning of the trial in the city of Neuruppin.
It's a lot of emotion. It's very difficult to speak. Can't really speak now. I'm very touched. So, speak.
Grumbach was asked how long he had been waiting for this moment.
8 years.
Doctors said Joseph S. is only partially fit to stand trial. Prosecutors charge him with contributing to the crimes of shooting Soviet prisoners of war, as well as gassing people. Sachsenhausen housed political prisoners from all over Europe. The suspect's lawyer told the court his client did not want to comment on the allegations.
He obviously does not want to find the strength to remember. For the camp survivors and the relatives of those killed who came here to hear a piece of truth, it means yet another rejection and an insult.
The lawyer of an 83-year-old woman whose father was killed in Sachsenhausen.
My client is not looking for a harsh sentence. That would be absurd. The defendant is a very old man. It is very important to her that the crimes and the murders are put into focus again.
A 2011 court ruling paved the way for these final prosecutions of former concentration camp guards. It stated even those who contributed indirectly to wartime murders could bear criminal responsibility. Lorraine Ferrier, NTD News.
In Sweden now, authorities are halting the use of Moderna's vaccine for people 30 and younger after reports of side effects. The country's health agency says there's an increased risk of heart inflammation, although it says the risk is small. NTD's Costa M&S brings us the story.
The Swedish health agency on Wednesday said the country is suspending the use of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine for people born in 1991 and later. That announcement came after reports of possible rare side effects among youths and young adults, such as myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart muscle, which the Mayo Clinic says can include symptoms that resemble a heart attack. In a statement, the health agency said the connection is especially clear when it comes to Moderna's vaccine Spikevax, especially after the second dose. It added that the risk of being affected was very small. The health agency now recommended the Comirnaty vaccine from Pfizer-BioNTech instead. Some 81,000 people born in 1991 or later had received a first Moderna shot. They would not be getting a second jab. Earlier this week, the Swedish health agency said people aged 12 to 15 would only get the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The European Medicines Agency approved the use of Comirnaty in May, while Spikevax was given the nod for children over 12 in July. Costa M&S, NTD News.
And Finland on Thursday joined Sweden in pausing the use of Moderna's vaccine for younger males due to possible cardiovascular side effects. Finnish health officials cited the same Nordic study involving Finland, Sweden, Norway and Denmark. To much happier news now. Did you know making wine is also possible in a big city? Paris Montmartre residents took to the neighborhood's vineyard this week to harvest the French capital's grapes. NTD's France correspondent David Vivez reports.
As with any big city, Paris has its large buildings, bright lights and the sounds of traffic. Montmartre Hill is one of the highest points where one can admire the urban landscape. Just beside the hill, a vineyard spreads across more than 1,500 square meters. 90 years ago, officials were planning to allow high-rise buildings there, but the neighborhood did two things French are experts in. They rebelled against the politicians in charge, and they planted vineyards. Eric Sureau leads a neighborhood committee in charge of the vineyard. He wasn't there 90 years ago when it began, but he makes sure the tradition lives on today. Grape picking begins this week in the vineyard. The activity draws in locals and neighbors, who've harvested about 730 kilos from now. Vineyard worker Vincent Bolenor says this year's season is a mixed one.
We have Pinot and Gamay grapes, so it's a wine with a pretty good taste, but a light one. We can't compare Montmartre wine with others. We remain unique.
Bearing a good harvest despite the heavy rains and the late frosts that ravage winemaking areas in much of the country this year. Up to 2,000 bottles are produced each year. Though the wine hasn't as much fame as other red or rose wines, it still makes the neighborhood proud. Besides, according to the district mayor, sales of the wine will benefit charity.
We're also making wine to do some good. So some of our proceeds go to the Child Care Charity Association to help less privileged children and to senior citizens. The sale of this wine since its creation benefits social causes.
Lejointe said local leaders plan to apply for UNESCO's World Heritage title. Another way to make sure the Montmartre residents' very own garden will remain as it is. David Vives, NTD News.
And finally to Italy, magnet for musicians around the world. The town of Cremona is known as the birthplace of the violin. Now, it's home to a new musical academy where students can study with master violinists. Let's take a look. NTD's Joy Duguid shows us around.
Cremona in northern Italy boasts a proud history of stringed instrument making. The small town was once home to Antonio Stradivari, the greatest violin maker of all, as well as Andrea Amati, who designed the first violin in the mid-16th century. Despite the passage of time, the instruments are still made in time-honoured tradition.
Well, it all started back in the mid-1500s when Andrea Amati produced the first instruments that we know because he put a label inside the instrument, you know, so that we know he existed, and there also are archival information. But he made the first, what we call true violin.
More than 500 years later, in the very birthplace of violin, a musical academy has been created to promote excellence. On Monday, the Stauffer Centre for Strings opens its doors to students, offering opportunities to learn from and play with the world's maestros. The centre encourages research and study into the production of violins, as well as the music itself.
So after 50 years from the creation of the Stauffer Foundation and 35 years from the creation of the Stauffer Academy, we are about to open the Stauffer Centre for Strings, the very first international centre entirely dedicated to strings.
The Stauffer Foundation was founded by a Swiss and Italian entrepreneur. A graduate of the foundation, Francesca Dego, is now one of Italy's best-known violinists.
This wonderful masterclass for concertmasters, for orchestral leaders, which is of course one of the top jobs in the industry, and very few teachers, very few students actually get to access a course and to meet face-to-face with so many different leaders from the top.
For those hoping to make a career with these instruments, Dego has some advice.
You need the charisma, you need to be a figure the audience wants to listen to. You need to have a voice that is your own, but that also means something to who listens, because if it doesn't, they won't like you, they won't. And it's very cruel in that way, but it's showbiz.
Violins made by Antonio Stradivari, Andrea Amati and other masters are priceless and only lent out by foundations. Today, Cremona has more than 140 workshops where artisans of all nationalities design and make musical instruments. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.